Hello there, and welcome back to the Chap's Guide. My name is Ash, and I'm your host on this journey through men's style, self-development and personal grooming. Now, that journey you take through life will take you through all of the seasons of the year, regardless of where you live. And here in the Northern Hemisphere, in southern England where I live, we are firmly into autumn. Now, admittedly, it's a beautiful sunny autumn this morning. The sun is beating down on me, but the well-dressed man needs to be prepared for all of the environmental challenges that he will face over the coming months. Surely it's going to get a lot colder, a lot damper and wetter as we go forward into autumn and then into winter. So for me, one of the simple joys, I think, of autumn is changing over the clothing that I wear so that it's appropriate for the season that I'm entering, so that I'm comfortable and warm and look great as well. And one of the main components of the way that I look, as I've always said to people, your clothing starts from the ground up, and that's the footwear that you wear in these times of tribulation in the weather. And for me, that means getting the boots out ready for autumn. So I've got my boot collection out, and I'm going to tell you or show you the boots that I wear and the reasons why I've selected those as my companions through these darker times of year. Now, it's not all boots. There are actually a pair or two of shoes here as well, but they're specific for this time of year. And let me tell you what I choose to wear at this time of year. Now, my first choice is a pair of boots that has seen me through the winter months for quite some time, and that is the brogue dress boot. The reason why I picked the brogue dress boot? Well, it's got a lot going for it, really. And actually, do you know, if you meet me during the winter and I'm not out ranging in the woods, chances are this is what I'll wear, because this is my sort of perennial favourite year in, year out. Now, the brogue dress boot I choose because, firstly, it's function over form. This is a tough leather boot, and I've paired it with a day-night rubber sole. That's really important to me here in the UK. The rubber sole means I get good traction and good grip on the wet and often icy surfaces that I'll be walking around on. Leather is not great at that time of year. Now, so we've got practicality, but we've also got visual interest, because the broguing, or those little punched holes which you see forming a pattern in the boot, in this case it's a full wingtip type of brogue, it adds visual interest. It adds texture to the boot, and it allows you to express some of your personality. Now, you can choose any colour you like. I tend to prefer darker colours in the darker months, and yeah, as you can see, this lovely brogue boot looks the part, and one of the beauties of this boot, versatility, all right? It looks great with a pair of jeans, particularly in this burnished burgundy colour. It also looks pretty spectacular when it's worn with chinos. And it can even be pressed into service with, grey flannel slacks, because that broguing crosses the boundary between casual and smart casual, maybe even into the bottom depths of formality quite easily. The brogue is a traditional boot. It's a traditional shoe style. It's been around a long time. That means, it's got the heritage, and it can be worn with so many different types of clothes. So for me, the brogue dress boot is absolutely the boot that's on my feet when I'm trudging the streets of the city or anywhere else in the next few months. Now, I'm going to stay with the brogue theme here, because my next choice, it's a shoe, it's not a boot, but it is a brogue shoe, and it's a full wingtip. In this case, this is actually a Loke Birkdale brogue, and in a lovely chestnut colour. And the reason why I transitioned to darker coloured brogues in the winter is twofold. Firstly, they give the impression of being a bit more robust, and they carry off the rubber sole a bit more easily. Again, a day-night sole, a rubber composite sole, tough, rugged, comfortable, and also gives you sure-footed grip. Now, that broguing, particularly in a darker colour, well, why do I choose it? It's because it seems to fit the season so much better in an autumnal earth colour, but also the broguing means that when the shoe gets splashed with a bit of mud, a bit of wet, it doesn't show up so obviously as it would in, say, a hole cut shoe or a cap toe Oxford. Because, you know, when you've got a shoe which is all the same finish, when you get a splash of salt, say, off the pavement on there, you know, they put salt down to stop ice forming, some of that splashes onto the shoe and it'll dry as a white residue on the shoe. It's very obvious if you've got a plain toe cap. However, with the broguing, it hides many of those imperfections which you pick up as you're walking around the streets normally in daily life. So for me, the brogue, it's a chunky, rugged country shoe. It's also that lovely texture and that lovely brogue patterning hides many of the issues that you'll encounter by walking around in these darker, wetter, autumnal and winter days ahead. Now, my number 3 choice for the footwear that's going to take me through the months ahead is this extremely rugged combat style boot. Perhaps it harkens back to my sort of military era. I was in the military for 10 years as a young chap, and I found great pleasure in wearing chunky, rugged combat boots because, you know, whatever the day throws at you, you've got it covered as regards to your footwear. And this particular boot absolutely hits that criteria. This is actually a Clark's Craftmaster boot, no longer in production, but as you can see, it is a uncompromising boot with a totally rugged commando type sole underneath. This means whatever environment I'm walking around in, this boot's going to plow through it. You know, it's got the grip, it's got the traction that you need. It's also Goodyear welted, so that sole is mechanically stitched to the upper. There's no issues with them ever coming apart and separating. Its simple black leather construction means, yeah, I can wear it in a casual format, which is what I always do, but, you know, it has versatility. It's got a black cap toe. So, you know, you can keep it looking nice if you want to, put a bit of polish on there, should you wish to do so. But for me, this boot is all about utility. This is the boot that I sling on in the mornings when I'm going out for my pre-morning walk every day. Because I know whatever the weather's doing, I'm safe. My feet are going to be wet and dry. And particularly in regards to the keeping warm, I've sized up half a size with this pair of boots. So I normally take a UK 8, but I went for an 8.5 because that means I can wear a thicker woolly sock on those coldest of days and my feet are nice and snug and insulated from the cold inside this rugged leather boot. So for me, the combat boot is my day-to-day utility boot, the work boot of my daily life. Okay, so you can tell I live in a rural environment. I often walk around on unpaved roads and I'm walking around fields, so I need a boot that is capable and rugged enough to deal with a wet, muddy environment every day, keeping me warm, keeping me dry. So it would be foolish of me not to mention the fact that a large portion of the winter and autumn I will be wearing a Wellington boot. And this is an Ariat Wellington boot, American company, and it's neoprene lined, this particular one, which means the inside is beautifully insulated, it's lovely and warm, and my feet actually never get cold when I'm wearing these. You know, they really perform an excellent function. And that's why the Wellington boot came into existence originally. The Wellington, of course, named after the person who brought them into creation, the Duke of Wellington, or Arthur Wellesley, his actual name, who was a military commander during the 19th century, and he often saw that his foot soldiers, excuse the pun, his soldiers, were sick and unable for combat operations because they were suffering foot conditions caused through having wet and cold feet. Things like trench foot or foot rot, which can be absolutely debilitating. Let's be honest, you can't walk, you can't fight. So it's up to the general to sort that out. So he commissioned a boot which would, and he wore it himself, which would prevent those conditions afflicting his men. Originally, it was a leather boot up way above the ankle, which protected the foot from the damp and wet conditions. Over time, these have morphed into more practical materials, of course, rubber and many other materials which are impervious to water, unlike the original leather. So the Wellington boot is a boot which, in a couple of weeks, when it gets really wet, very unpleasant here, this is what I'll be wearing for most of the months ahead, every time I come out into an environment like this. Even when you see me filming at this table in the months ahead, what you don't see is I'll be wearing these with the suit on top. Okay, so my fifth choice, and I like to have some choices when it comes to what to wear on my feet, as you know. I'm going for one which has been an all-time favourite of mine, and it's the Chukka boot. Now, the Chukka boot is often thought of more of a summer item. You know, we think of the desert boot, the Clark's original desert boot, the world's most popular Chukka boot, worn just above the ankle, very simple, very practical boot. Same goes for this one. This is just a grained leather Chukka boot, and I've had this boot for many, many years. In fact, the sole or the heel rather, has worn down. It needs to be replaced before I wear it for this coming season. But it's on a day-night sole, which means, again, excellent traction, excellent grip whenever you need it in the winter. Well, in this case, we've got 3 eyelets, but they can often have just 2 eyelets, which means it's very easy to get on and off. So if you want a pair of boots that you leave near the door, if you're going to walk out suddenly, you know, these are the boots which would be my go-to daily, throw them on if I need to go out to put the rubbish bins out for the collection day or whatever. They're also a boot which again crosses the boundaries between casual and slightly formal. It's a boot which can be worn with your jeans or with your chinos with absolute ease. Or, do you know what, at a pinch, because it's quite simple and plain, it can easily be worn with a suit at a pinch. You know, I'm not saying it would be my first choice of footwear to wear with a suit, but you do often, you know, suited and booted is the old expression, and you know, this is one of the boots which you could wear with your suit if you needed to. But for sure, it's practical, it's capable, and it's a boot which will see you well through the more difficult days of the weather ahead. Now, I know what you're thinking. Just how stylish can that Chukka boot be? You know, what is the coolest boot that you can put on? And I have one here today. It is a Chukka boot, absolutely, so it is. It's got 3 eyelets and it's just above the ankle. But as you can see, this particular model, which is made by Sanders & Sanders, is entirely constructed of patent leather. The sole is leather as well, so not ideal for wearing around the streets or in any sort of outdoor environment like this, rural environment, because the leather sole, yes, it will absorb water. If worn for long enough in the wet, it will transfer that moisture to your foot. It'll take quite some time, but it will get through that leather sole eventually, and it won't afford you the grip at all that a day-night sole will. But this is a bit more formal. Clearly, you're not going to be wearing a black patent leather Chukka boot if you're just going out to, you know, do the gardening. So I think this is an incredibly stylish boot. Traditionally, these sort of, I think they're called George-style boots, are worn by military men with mess dress, you know, the most formal of clothing when gentlemen and officers are dining in. But I just think these look so swish, and I wear these when I'm wearing my grey woolen slacks, perhaps with a navy blazer, just to add some absolute punch to the outfit. And you know, I think these look superb, and they are without doubt the most blinged out pair of Chukka boots I think you can get. But yeah, I just love these for those special occasions. Now, my next autumn tip is actually not a boot or a shoe, it's a colour. Because, you know, you've noticed that many of my shoes that I've shown you in boots, they're on the darker tone. You know, they have moved away from the light tans, which we often wear in the summertime, and the suedes, and I've put them away, and now I've transitioned into the earthen tones. And there's a particular tone or colour which I really do favour at this time of year, and it's burgundy or oxblood, depending on which shade you prefer. But I just think burgundy is the perfect colour that matches the autumn palette. You know, as the leaves have changed colour, they're falling off the trees, everything is getting a bit more, you know, naturalistic in its nature. We're seeing lots of browns and rusty reds in the trees, and I think the burgundy goes perfectly with that. Fortunately, it's also an incredibly chameleon colour. You can wear it with greys, you can wear it with navies, you can pretty much wear it with any colour, particularly browns, greens. It's just perfect for your entire colour palette, for what you'll find in the wardrobe, and it's just so fitting. This is a Grenson semi-brogue, as you can see, with some grained leather, but also lovely bit of brogue on the toe cap. But that burgundy just makes this shoe the perfect accompaniment for one's autumn collection. Now I'm going to leave you with a bonus here. It's not a boot that I own. It is a fantasy boot that I would love to own because, you know, as you can imagine, I'm a bit of a shoe guy. I like to know what's out there, and I've always got a grail boot or a grail shoe that I'm heading towards. And there's one particular boot which I think would be my fantasy boot for the winter months. And that is a boot by trusted British heritage shoe manufacturer from Northamptonshire. It's Chini. Now, Chini make a boot called the Tiger Moth 2 military boot. And I'll show you the photos. It is absolutely glorious. It's made of a beautiful whiskey coloured kudu leather, which is soft but rugged and tough. Its styling is absolutely traditional military with a touch of broguing just across the toe cap. And, you know, it just gives you the impression of being incredibly capable to take on anything that you're going to encounter in the winter months, but at the same time looking fabulously stylish and beautiful in that colour, and it just looks like it can take on the world. And that's not the beauty of it though. When you look inside the boot, you will see that it is lined entirely with wonderful shearing, beautiful insulating material, which will make sure your foot is insulated, warm, and well taken care of during those winter months. Sadly, the reason why I don't own this boot, well, it costs £425, which is a substantial investment in a boot. Now, I know by looking at it, you know, it's Goodyear welted. It's got a remarkably beautiful commando sole, which is going to last for decades and decades. And being Goodyear welted, it can be repaired over and over again. So this is a shoe which will last the ages. Perhaps I will invest at some time in the future, but until then, I will just, you know, look at it and hope and dream that one day I'll get to wear these boots. What's your fantasy boot? Let me know in the comment section below. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you have, I would be delighted if you would give me the honour of giving this video a thumbs up. And if you're not a member of us at the Chaps Guide channel, why not click the red button, subscribe, and we will go on the Chaps Guide journey together towards men's style nirvana. So until the next time, take care of yourself, have warm, dry, and wonderfully insulated and stylish feet in these cooling months, and I'll see you again very soon.